thank you to Chris and to Eleanor and to everyone for inviting me here to present this today. I've been attending a few of the study sessions of the temple, and I've always been interested in the writings and the teachings of the temple. So it really is an honor to be here today presenting to everyone. And today we're going to look at the topic of theosophy moving forwards. It's often the question of the relevance of this movement of theosophy to the modern world. And I would like to present the case that theosophy continues to be relevant and is relevant now more than ever. But before we begin on the presentation itself, I will offer a brief introduction to myself, and perhaps the best way to do that will be through sharing a couple of pictures or images which will show some of the work I have participated in at various theosophical groups around the world. All right, so I'm a student of theosophy, and my work has mostly taken place through the Theosophical Society Adyar, which I'm sure everyone here is familiar with. However, I've also been involved with other theosophical groups, in particular with the Pasadena Society, the Theosophical Society Pasadena, which was well known for its work under the presidency of William Hugh Judge and Catherine Tinsley. So my theosophical journey really began in England when I became a member of the Worthing Lodge of the Theosophical Society. However, prior to that, I'd always had a deep interest in theosophy, comparative religion, philosophy, and science, and in particular, the relationship between all of these things. I found from some independent research that there seemed to be a constant thread, or something which brought these various traditions and these various streams and various ideas and philosophies together. There seemed to be some kind of underlying core or underlying element of unity inherent in all of them. And I found the further one goes into the study of comparative religion, or the further one goes into the study of philosophy or science, one always arrives from the diversity of things towards a unity, towards a sense of oneness. This seems to be present in all of these traditions, in all of these fields of inquiry. And so I found this really fascinating, and my research into these sort of subjects eventually brought me to the writings of Madame H.P. Blavatsky and the other theosophical writers. And so it was with that, answering what felt like a bit of a calling, that I became involved with the Theosophical Society. And since then, my work has taken me around the world, the countries all around the world, but particularly in the Philippines and India and the UK. And so I'd like to share with you a couple of pictures to perhaps give you a glimpse of my journey so far. So this here is a picture of my first public lecture at the Leeds Theosophical Society in England, which is a very historic lodge where I spoke on the topic of the ageless wisdom and the Bhagavad Gita. I'd always had a deep interest in the Hindu scriptures and the philosophy of the Upanishads and the Vedas. Here is also a picture of the Philippines section. This was shortly after my arrival in the Philippines. This was my first day at the national headquarters of the Theosophical Society, where I worked for a number of years. And so we see here a mixture of people from different lodges, from different groups involved in the work in the Philippines section. And I traveled around the Philippines, lecturing at various lodges and participating in some work. And one thing I was particularly interested in was reviving dormant lodges, lodges that had perhaps become inactive due to disorganization or due to members moving away to different locations or passing away. And so one thing I assisted in was the revival of the Pandakan Lodge, which later became the Pranava Lodge. And here we are holding our charter granted by Adyar for our name change. This is in what both serves as the national headquarters building and also the lodge building. Lodge. I'm pictured here with Christopher C., the former secretary and current president of the Panava Lodge. This is another photo of some of the members or the participants of our lodge activities, and we would regularly gather here, usually once a week or once every 2 weeks, depending on the schedule, to have various events and meetings where we would discuss theosophy, usually in quite a broad way. We would study some of the writings of Madame Blavatsky, but we were also very much interested in the writings of other theosophical groups and other authors, which is something I've always been interested in. I do think the study of theosophy should be rather expansive, and it's good to keep an open mind in this inquiry. My work also brought me to India, and here I'm presenting a lecture to the Bangalore Theosophical Society, one of the oldest lodges in India, and I believe the largest lodge in the world, with a membership of 500. So this was a lecture on theosophical cosmogony. And here I am pictured with the lodge president and other lodge officers of the Bangalore Lodge. During the same trip, I visited another lodge, the Maleswaram Lodge, which was undergoing renovations. This was a very historic lodge founded by, or the charter was signed by Annie Besant, who also gave the inaugural speech. Annie Besant was the second president of the Theosophical Society and a well-known writer on theosophical subjects. These are a couple more photos of some of my work in the Philippines section with various lodges there. Very active in the Philippines. There are many lodges taking place, many events taking place throughout the country. Very active, dedicated work from everyone in the Philippines section. I was also invited in 2018 to be a speaker at the International Convention of the Theosophical Society, where I spoke as part of the Theosophical Order of Service section on the ideal of service. So I've visited Adyar 2 times, once in 2017, once in 2018, and I do hope to visit again very shortly. During my visits to Adyar, I organized some youth forums where we discussed, among other things, the future of theosophy and the relevance of theosophy, broadly speaking, not only in the context of the Theosophical Society, but more generally in the context of the Theosophical movement. And this is a photo from the second youth forum that I facilitated. And I'm pictured here with Mr. Tim Boyd, the current international president of the Theosophical Society. And the presentation I will be giving today was actually adapted from the presentation I gave here in 2018 on the future of the Theosophical Society, but I've adapted it a bit to talk more generally about the future of the Theosophical movement. And this is another photo from the same meeting. So perhaps now with that brief introduction out of the way, perhaps that gives you a bit of context about who I am, why I am here, what my work has been so far. And so we can now begin on the presentation proper. So I've titled this Theosophy Moving Forwards because I think there's been a tendency at times to look backwards in theosophy, to go back to consider, okay, what did Madame Blavatsky have to say? What did Madame Blavatsky say about this or that? What were the original teachings? What were the original things put down in the secret doctrine and so on? And while this is very important, and while this provides a firm foundation for the theosophical movement, I think it's also important to look forwards and to taking this firm foundation to look towards the future and consider the continuing relevance of these teachings to the modern world and to the world of the future. So first, I think it would be helpful to put things into context. So here is a theosophical family tree. This is taken from the Theosophy Wiki. And so this helps to provide an overview of where everything fits into the broader theosophical movement. And in today's presentation, I will be using this term theosophical movement to refer generally to all these various subsets of this movement. And so, as we all know, the Theosophical Society was formed in 1875. The international headquarters was then established at Adyar in 1882. There were various other sections formed, such as the American section in 1886. And then there was the well-known split, the Judge case, which took place in 1895. And this caused a fundamental split in the Theosophical Society into two primary branches. And there we have the American section of the Theosophical Society, Adyar, and the International Adyar Society. And on the other hand, we have the Theosophical Society in America with Judge elected as president. It was from this latter split that we then see a variety of other theosophical groups coming into existence. We have firstly an independent TS in America in 1898 coming about. Then the TS of New York, once again another independent group coming about. These were both very short-lived groups that don't continue to this day. However, then we have the Temple of the People coming about in 1899, which obviously continues because this is through which this talk is taking place. And a number of other groups, you may be familiar with the ULT, the United Lodge of Theosophists, which do continue very actively in many countries around the world to this day. The Blavatsky Association, which is no longer active, and then another split, the TS Point Loma, who are still very active and are, in fact, one of the most impressive groups in terms of bringing theosophy to the future or modernizing theosophy. So we see these various splits taking place, but they're all rooted in the same theosophical movement. And one of the things I really want to emphasize today is that the organizational nature of these things is secondary to the foundation on which they are formed. The timeless truths which underlie these organizations is far more important than whatever organizational matters or schisms and so on are taking place. And I do think all these theosophical groups are wonderful in their unique ways, and each of them has something to offer to the world of the theosophical teachings. And while there may have been a little bit of nastiness and disagreement back at the time that this took place, I do think we are seeing a coming together, a reunion of sorts of these theosophical movements, not in the sense of forming under one organization, but in the sense of understanding that we are all agreed and we all share in the same quest for truth, in the same study of theosophy, and in our attempt to live a theosophical life. So I do see a lot more friendship taking place, particularly at for example, at the 2018 International Convention of the Theosophical Society. We had a rather historic occurrence of speakers from the ULT and speakers from the TS Point Loma joining the convention, and it was sort of an interesting coming together of people from different theosophical groups, all under this banner of universal brotherhood. So that hopefully provides a bit of a context to where everything fits in terms of the relationships between different groups. But from now on, I'm going to simply refer to the theosophical movement, meaning collectively all of these groups.